Violet ink. She keeps the butter knives in a coffee tin on the windowsill because the drawer squeaks and the tin does not. The tin came with a gift once, cookies tied in cellophane, and she kept it because the lid fits and smells faintly of a winter someone else paid for. The morning the box arrives, fog stands in the scrubs along the verge like it has a right to, and the mailwoman leaves the package without ringing, which is how they do it here when it looks like you might be sleeping but probably on a tea. The brown paper is honest, the corners have let go. The tape lifts with a butter knife the way a bandage wants to if you've made peace with it beforehand. Cardboard exhales dust that smells like old catalogues, like the air at the back of the post office where the fan stirs a memory and gives it back thin. On the face of the box, from, and then her maiden name, written in a hand she does not know anymore, Violet Ballpoint. An address she hasn't said aloud in 27 years is printed beneath. That building is a lot now, with lines for trucks that never fill, no addressee, no barcode. A postal marker has drawn a good-natured question mark in one corner, as if to say, we don't know either. But look, we did our part. She uses 2 fingers to lift the flaps out instead of tearing them, because there is no sense in teaching your hands to break when all they do lately is negotiate. Slips sit inside, not pages, not letters, slips. The top halves of envelopes, the backs of index cards with coffee moons, a piece of a store register tape with her name in the margin, the corner of a ruled notebook sheet bitten through by a binder ring. Rubber bands hug them in neat nests. The ink is violet, her old color. The loops lean the way they used to, the way a person leans before they commit to being in a photograph. She carries the box to the table and spreads the slips like she's laying silverware for guests. The room brightens a small degree, as if the paper brought its own noon with it. Her tiny plant in the chipped blue pot lifts a leaf. The fridge hum drops into a softer key. She reads a fragment and keeps her face plain in case anyone is watching. Piers, cumin, light bulbs. A map margin with a quick star near an intersection she can draw with her eyes closed. A line with a street name that got changed after a council vote no one attended. A recipe for lentil soup that she wrote near the sink one winter, with the burner refusing to be more than a circle that glowed. Her old apology to someone whose face she can find right now. I should have called first. She picks up a triangle of index card with the precise angle of a corner and the exact pressure of a pen that believed it could make a letter own itself. She can feel the grooves where her hand had gone twice over a G to get a loop she liked. It is the hand that used to write late slips and bus passes and call parents at lunchtime. This is Margo from the office. Yes, he's fine. He just forgot. That hand kept the town at a simmer for 30 years. When it went to tremor, she moved to a duplex on Pine and taught her fingers to be slow. She takes her current pen, the black one with the click that doesn't stick, and writes a date at the bottom of a slip, and the numbers show up careful but foreign, like someone borrowing her mouth to say something and doing a near miss. The loop of the G comes out wrong. The G has always told on her. Her old G had a little confidence in it, a tale that could hold a light grocery bag between the store and the car. This one has to think its way through. She turns the empty box over and presses a strip of new tape across the seam with the flat of her hand. She writes "Return to sender" on a label and sticks it over the ripped paper where "to" would go, then draws a line through the words because it seems too neat, like a spell you didn't mean to cast. She copies the soup from one fragment, adjusting for what a person can carry home on foot in this town. She watches oil go the color of a ring she wore once, and then lost in the laundromat on Dell. She eats by the window, alone the way people are alone, without feeling punished by it. Pog moves side to side in the locust branches. She lifts a forefinger and practices a better loop on the glass. It leaves nothing but the mind of a loop, which is a kindness. The slips dry on the rack like washed spoons. After the soup, after she wipes the stove with the patience you give something that has gotten you through 3 winters, after she folds the dish towel the way her mother did, stacking the edges so the pile won't list to one side, she reads more. She finds a numbered list that is not hers by content, but perfectly hers by hand. 1. Call landlord about the drip. 2. Buy stamps before rates change again. 3. Don't check the box until you've had coffee. She smiles into the lamp, which answers with a faint buzz when she leans too near. She lets the small charge ground itself through her forearm into the table. The table has 3 burn marks at the far edge from a time with a different stove and a hotter pan. She likes the marks. They prove a person was here, pressed heat to surface and got away with it. That night she places the fragments in the cookie tin with the butter knives, without meaning to. It is a place, that's all. The space needed something that wasn't knives, and the knives didn't object. She leaves the box on the chair. If someone calls for it, she will show it to them like an animal you be found that will not let you put a hand on it, but will let you speak kindly within a foot. The town here is called Brookflats in the paper, and flats in the way mouths do business. The river is a long, wet ditch with yellow grass and a bad conscience. There used to be a plant that made glass bottles. The building still stands, emptier than a system. The post office keeps strange hours because the schedule comes from somewhere that doesn't map onto the light. The grocery is a half mile, and the lady at check stand 2 says, "There you go, sweetheart," to everyone. If you stand in your door at night, you can hear the freight talk to the crossing arm and the arm answer, and then be still without the dignity it thinks it deserves. The next morning, she goes out early to the parking lot that used to be her address. She rides the bus because it makes a person feel held in a way walking does not. The driver knows her. The morning kids pull their hoodie strings tight until they are faces in caves and slouch to the middle. The heater under the seats blows your ankles warm and your knees cold. She rests her hand on the window where someone's backpack had left a grid of dust. There is nothing at the lot but gravel and yellow lines, and a dumpster whose lid has learned to make thunder when it falls. She looks for a seam, something out of True, a place where cardboard might have come up for air and then gone back under. She stands at the plate where a spigot used to be, a little iron circle capped with a square, and looks at the old wall, which is sky now. The wind puts a hand on her coat. She says out loud, unembarrassed, because the air here always holds more words than you think. "Well then," and a man walking his dog looks over, sees she is older than his worry, and faces his dog back to its own life. At home, she opens the box again, and this time, the rubber bands give a sound like a breath if you pull and let the friction talk. A new fragment sits on top of the stack. She did not put it there. It is a half envelope with an old stamp imprint at the corner. The ink shows a number and a street and nobody's name. The curve of the numbers is her curve. The way the 3 has a pride in its middle, hers. The line reads like a place she could find with the bus map in her drawer. She has kept the bus map in a sandwich bag because paper likes to remember soups, and she like it to remember roots instead. She traces the line with a finger, and it leaves her skin hungry. She spends an hour making plans to walk there, and an hour talking herself out of it, because the weather is thinking about rain, and because there is a small limit on a person's appetite for novelty when the cupboard still has her old cereal, and the coffee needs water, and the mailbox may have mail. The mailbox does not, except for a flyer about roofs and one about a church whist dinner where they promise pie and someone to look you in the eye when you speak. The fridge hiccups and catches itself. She taps it lightly where the door is stubborn, and the door closes like it was its idea, not hers. On Sunday, the town sends out a robocall about a brief planned outage while they test something in the line that keeps lights honest. "Half an hour," a pleasant voice says. "It will be longer." She fills the kettle so she can watch the spout for the trickle that tells you the boil hit. She lays towels end to end on the counter because she always has, and because she likes the way the cotton makes its own landscape when it dries. The power drops a second, pulls itself upright, drops again as if it found something to pick up down there. The lamp sighs out. The radio quiets. The fridge sings one measure more than it needs to, and then goes off like a man who decided to be polite to a point. In the gentle absence of power, the room makes new noises. The neighbor upstairs slides a chair. The heater ticks as it realizes it is not expected to provide. Somewhere a car alarm wakes and remembers itself and returns to sleep. She sets her mug on a slip because it's handy, and feels a small chill at the base of the mug, as if the ceramic had spoken to the paper. When she lifts the mug, the violet ink has taken a ghost of the mug's foot and made a ring that the ring had not asked for. She places the mug in the sink to be worked on later by hot water and time. The slips begin to sort themselves when she isn't looking. She doesn't mean to give them a place. She is not a fussy person. But on the third day, the grocery lists have found each other like a school on the shelf. The maps stack under the plant in a way that makes the pot look like it has decided to be a compass rose. The apologies sit under the phone on the wall, which hasn't rung since the last time someone dialed wrong, and even then only to ask for someone who has left the state. She watches the arrangements the way birds watch weather, accepting that a thing will happen whether or not your body knows how to keep it. When she sleeps, she dreams of paper, but not of words. She dreams of the moment before words press, the thought of a thought, the empty line with its promise that it will not bite. In the morning, she finds she has written one line, not in sleep, but in the way you must have done it while you were thinking of something else. A recipe begun and abandoned. Lentils, onion, cumin, salt, she has written. Then crossed out salt, then written salt again on a new line, a little to the right, as if moving the word could change the taste. Friends ask how she is. She says fine in a voice that means she knows what fine means and is choosing to use a simpler version anyway. They talk about the town meeting the paper wrote up with words like budgetary realities and the best we can do with the time we have. She does not mention the box because you never want to be the kind of person who saves a story up for the phone and spills it out like a jar of buttons and expects someone else to sort. She goes to the old address. The bus lets her off half a block down because the sign has been moved and nobody told the schedule. The woman behind the post office counter has nails the color of cherries and a tiredness that is expensive. Dead letters, the woman says when Margo asks, making it sound like a patient relative they keep in the back. We don't have that here, she adds, as if she might be wrong but will not check. A man behind her raises a hand toward a room you can see if you tilt your head and stand on one leg, and the woman doesn't notice him. Margo buys stamps because refusing to buy something when you have gone somewhere is a kind of insult, and she sticks one on a blank card and writes her own address on it just to see if it will find her again. She starts answering the slips, not all of them. A person must choose. She writes next to the grocery list, buy pears if they smell like pears, not like oranges. And buy light bulbs, even if they insist they are all sold in boxes of 5 now. She writes next to the apology, I accept, without knowing who she is or what she did wrong. Her pen makes a longer letter than she intended. It looks like it has had a long day. She turns the card over and adds awkwardly, it's fine, my hand is different now. When she sets the card down, another card below it is damp around the edges as if brought in from a foggy porch. She puts them both on the dish rack because it is a good place for things that want to become lighter. The town lumberyard posts reduced hours. The library puts a sign about self-serve checkout until further notice, which means the one clerk will stand near the desk and talk to people when they pretend they don't know how scanners work. The school paints the curb again, brighter yellow, then apologizes in the paper for the shade. Everyone apologizes when everyone else is busier than they want to be. Her old principal used to say, just show up and say what you mean. He is in Arizona now and says nothing to her. The slips begin to predict. It is not flamboyant. She wouldn't tolerate that. A fragment says bus, delay beside the star she once drew for a stop. And the bus is indeed late in the flat way. Buses are late. Snow, driver out of coffee. And when it arrives, everyone gets on with the faint relief you get when something has remembered you and behaved. A slip says eggs, and a minute later the radio that lives in the kitchen for company announces a special on eggs at the store she goes to. And she ignores it because eggs taste like someone else's breakfast when you are alone. Another fragment says bank with her old G proud in it. And when she passes the bank window, the teller she likes is bending over the counter to return a dropped card to a man with thick fingers. A small boy stands beside the man and says, "Is it ours?" And the teller laughs like a person who wants to be honest and yet loves the softer lie. Her appetite moves around like furniture. Toast is a friend, and then it is not. Soup is everything, and then suddenly, the idea of soup makes her feel like someone is crowding her good sense. Coffee is the hill she will die on. It always has been. She measures the coffee with a scoop that has known 3 homes. She listens for the kettle the way you listen for a neighbor to come up the stairs, putting your ear toward the quiet and letting it negotiate. At night, the fridge S compressor clicks on and off in a pattern that changes when the slips are stacked high near the door. She tries moving the slips and the compressor moves too, like it's paying attention to paper now, like it knows a crowd when it hears one. The sound is comforting until she notices she's counting clicks in her sleep. She dreams one night of a line as long as the river, made of people short of questions, but long on space to hold them. Each person carries a slip with their name on it. The line is patient the way waiting rooms are patient, without obligations, without oxygen. She writes on a fragment that seems like a free space, no writing on it, just her old violet pen testing itself in a dot like you do before you write a check. She writes, "Who sent these?" And when she lifts the pen, the question feels like it belongs to someone else. The next morning, there is an answer on the back of the same slip she did not put there. Notified, it says. It is her hand. It is not her hand. The G in notified isn't her G. It's sloppier, more about getting home than about standing up straight. The line slants like someone steering on gravel. She does not panic. It isn't her way. Panic is for events that have windows you might climb out of. This has a shape more like weather. On Thursday, the town passes around a notice about the water. "Do not be alarmed," it begins, which is a phrase that guarantees 2 responses. People who are and people who aren't. T in a third group who learns what the word alarmed can flex to hold. A change in taste may be observed due to repairs, it says. She runs the tap and holds a glass up to a fluorescent light to see if she can make the water confess anything. It cannot. A slip in the cookie tin says, "Jose water not for soup in violet." And she laughs quietly because of course. She writes on the back, "I boiled it 10, which is a number she gives herself to feel like someone is in charge. Her friend Gladys from church has taken to driving by and honking twice if she doesn't feel like getting out. Margo opens the door and waves a hand. Gladys opens her window just enough that the car retains its heat. "There's bingo," Gladys says. "You ought to come." Margo says maybe and knows she won't. Gladys nods like she expected that and throws a bag of oranges onto the stoop that rolls and thumps and catches itself against the step like a dog who knows the house. On the slip in the pile a hand writes, "Peel them over the sink," and she does. A week in, the slips have restored her muscle memory. She writes a list in her current hand, and the letters look better than they did last month. The G still won't commit, but if she doesn't watch it so hard, it goes fine. She copies the soup again for a neighbor whose ground floor kitchen has gone on strike, and as she writes, the recipe corrects itself in the margins. Her own old violet hand moves salt 2 lines down, surprises her with bay leaf, reasserts the necessity of lemon. Lemon like a light switch in a winter. She didn't buy lemons at the grocery because she didn't want to ask for a thing out of place. The slips have put one on her table. It sits where she puts mail, yellow as a warning sign, bright as a challenge. It is cold. The kitchen smells like a winter she had not planned to remember. The post office notices are different now. She gets a card in her mailbox that says her address is under review. "Do not contact us at this time," it says, which is a tone familiar from her years at the school. "Let us handle this. We are not equipped for you." She carries the card inside and puts it under the pepper shaker on the stove. The pepper shaker leaves a circle on the card like the one the mug had made on the slip. She crosses out "do not" and gives herself the courage to be a problem. She writes her old address on an envelope and walks it to the box on the corner. The box lid is stiff in the way unvisited things are. It squeals the squeal that all boxes squeal, then quiets, as if it is embarrassed you heard it. She watches until the flag inside falls back to show the mouth has closed. On the way home, she steps in a crack without seeing it and puts a hand on the trunk of a tree the way you might hold a banister. Bark is honest. It lets you take and does not ask who you are. She puts her hand down and notices sap on her fingers. It dries as she walks and she knows it is there without looking, like a ring you are no longer wearing. She finds, that afternoon, a slip she didn't write that contains a drawing of her kitchen table from above. The angle is incorrect, but the layout is right. The pepper shaker, the dish rack like a boat, the circle where the receipt magnet has been and will be. The drawing is in violet and the lines are hungry for a ruler but do not use one. There is a label on the drawing, staging. Her instinct is to think of theatre, of curtains that work if your hands know where to stand. But her other instinct, the one that kept the school from dying of its own forms, says storage. She folds the slip and puts it in the cookie tin, and the knives sit silent under it like a congregation. When she goes to the store for lemons to repay the slip for its generosity, the fluorescent over aisle 2 buzzes with a low insistence she can feel in her sinuses. She moves faster through that aisle lest it talk to her nervous system. The woman at check stand 2 says, "There you go, sweetheart," and Margo says, "You too," because you always want to return what is given, even if what is given isn't a phrase that fits you. On the walk back, she passes the laundromat and hears the low conversation of machines. The dryers breathe. A man sits with his legs too far apart, like he is trying to increase his geographic footprint. A basket turns slowly in a way that says nothing that can be read. That night she writes, "Return to sender again," on a label, and sticks it to the box and sets the box by the door. In the morning it is back on the table, and the label is on the underside, like a person had picked the box up, looked under it for answers, and put it back wrong side right. The label has lifted a little at one corner. Her old self would have smoothed it. She lets it be because not everything requires formalities to stay placed. Neighbors check on her because she has lived long enough to deserve checking on. She tells them she is fine. She tells them she has soup. They accept both only because they see the spoon in the sink and the lemon cut in a way that proves a person did what a lemon expects. She does not tell them about the slip that says, "Find me," and the other under it that says, "I am here." Seeing 2 slips argue in your hand is not a thing neighbors need. On a Tuesday with weather, the phone rings. She watches it the way you watch animals in a field you're not sure you are allowed to enter. She answers. Her name is spoken in a voice that's not anyone's from here. "This is a courtesy notification," the voice says. "A package has been delivered." She says yes. The voice asks her to press 1 to confirm. She does not. The voice continues anyway as if she had. "Do not attempt to return. Processing will occur at source." The line clicks. She puts the receiver back with two hands the way you do in museums when someone lets you hold a weapon from the past. That night, she dreams a room she knows without knowing, a long space behind a hatch, shelves with boxes that wear other people's handwriting, air that admits to being air. She reaches for a string that dangles from the ceiling light, and the string swings away like it has watched her come here before. She wakes tired and goes to the window and draws a circle on the fog that is an O better than any she has made with a pen this week. It helps. On Wednesday afternoon, the slips she has answered begin to be answered again. The answers are in her old hand. They correct her as if gently moving a cup nearer to the coaster without making a comment about rings. Under where she has written buy light bulbs regardless of packs of 5, her old hand writes 60 watt, then makes a small, careful G in wattage as if to remind the G how it used to be. Under her note about pears, her old hand says, not hard green ones, and little, please, not those baseballs disguised as fruit. Under the apology, her I accept, her old hand writes, are you sure, the way her younger voice used to. She flips the slip and writes yes, and the slip, not to be outdone, produces a well then in violet that dries before she can touch it. She stands at the sink and cups water in one hand and throws it at the window in a manner that is dramatic and mostly fails. A streak sits on the glass and catches sun and refuses to go anywhere interesting. She wipes it with the dish towel because there is no point in mopery when laundry exists. The bus map on the counter shifts 1 inch between breakfast and lunch. She did not move it. The map is inside the sandwich bag, and the bag has developed a small wrinkle in a place where nothing could have wrinkled it unless someone had folded it when she wasn't tea in the room. It is not that the world is haunted. It is that her own objects remember her better than she remembers herself. A man from the city comes by to paint a white line where the curb has become too suggestive. He wears a vest in a shade of orange invented by committees for safety. He uses a little wheeled thing that releases paint at a rate that satisfies the part of everyone that likes to watch exactness happen. She goes out to bring in her trash bin so would have to shade around it. He says, "Ma'am," and points with his chin to the side of her house where the ivy always acts innocent. She looks. In the ivy there is a section of brick bare, and the brick has a clean rectangle on it, as if someone set a box there for a season and moved it. "Been there long?" he asks. She says she doesn't know. He nods as if this is the right answer to give, and places his white mark with more care around the bare place than elsewhere, like he is circling a name on a list. When the rain comes, it is not the kind that undoes the work of weeks, just the kind that teaches you your coat is less than you wanted it to be. She peels oranges over the sink with her thumb, working the peel off in one hungry ribbon the way her mother did when she was pleased with herself. The garbage disposal complains in the voice of a man who thinks he has had quite enough. She apologizes to the sink for introducing pith into its working parts. The radio runs through the weather and the school lunch and the high school team, and then into a news bulletin about a temporary mail stoppage due to backload. The phrase backload takes up residence in her mouth and tastes like cardboard and work. One night, the slip on which she wrote who sent these produces a second answer, here. She writes back, "Where are you?" And the next day the box has an address under from that is not hers and not anyone. S. A P.O. box number that runs too long more digits than the town has room for. When she holds a light under the paper, she can see her own grooves from years ago, where her violet pen bit through and left memory on the table beneath. She runs her fingers over the grooves and feels the sensation in her ribs, like something is climbing down inside her to see what there is to see. She has a friend once who collected recipes, not for what you could cook, for what you could become. She thinks of that friend as she copies the lentil soup the 4th time. The slips have evolved it into something hers and not hers. All recipes become you if you do them enough. This one feels like it got there before she did. She brings a jar to Gladys because Gladys will not stop by. She will only honk. She leaves it on the stoop, and the steps make their cold sound, and the jar feels like a small argument being settled by compromise. Gladys calls later and says, "You could sell that." And Margo says, "I'm not a seller." And they fall into their comfortable silence like an old powder sinking into the bottle it belongs in. On Friday, the box is empty. The slips are on the table and on the counter and under the pepper shaker and beside the stove, making a little tent they will fall from. The box makes a flat little sound when she touches it, like a breath that died and was put back for safekeeping. She picks it up and it has weight. It should not. Cardboard does not keep weight around when you have taken the weight out. She turns it upside down and a bracelet falls to the table. It is not jewelry. It's a paper band of the sort libraries used to use on interlibrary loans, with a line for name and line for date and a dotted line that reminds you where tearing would be clean. The band is violet. Her name is on it in her old hand. Under date is the day the school moved her out of the office and into what they called consulting, which meant answering the phone for 2 hours twice a week and telling the caller that the person they wanted was in a meeting, but you could take a message in your good steady voice. She slips the band over her wrist without thinking. She feels it tighten, not painfully, just firmly, the way a nurse gets a blood pressure cuff right the second time. She looks at it until looking becomes a job, and then she goes about what is possible. She tests it. If she slides the band off her wrist and sets it by the plant, the compressor clicks back to its old pattern. If she puts it on, the compressor takes up the tune it learned from the slips. If she holds the band near the box makes a sound she cannot name, a little dry creak like sand choosing which way to fall. She says out loud, "You have a lot of ideas for a box." And the box says nothing, which feels more decent than argument. The next day there is a second band in the box. It says maiden name and her old address. She sits with it for a long time, like a person you do not invite in because you have to decide what it would mean to offer a chair. She loops it over the cookie tin and it stays as if the tin is a wrist it recognizes now. She makes coffee and the kettle takes longer to boil, and this is either something or nothing, and either way she gets her coffee. The dead letter place in her dream is bright one night, brighter than the boxes allowed the table to be. People are in it. She does not speak to them, but the sound of their paper on paper is like the sound of rain when you are inside with no need to go out. She wakes and someone has put a slip in her hand while she slept. She knows it because her hand is curled, like it learned a shape in the night. The slip says, "You are at source." She breathes and remembers to breathe softer, like you do when a baby sleeps on your chest, and any big breath would lift them a little more than they were ready to be lifted. She writes back, "I have a stove," and then feels foolish and then does not, because it is important to list what you have in case someone forgets. The town mails out a sheet with the garbage schedule on it and a note that says, "Do not leave boxes on curb before 8 p.m. and a smaller note that says, "Cardboard must be broken down." She breaks down the box in a kind of half-obedience and then does not put it out. She cannot quite explain why the box should stay, only that the table would be wrong without it. She knows this is not logical, but then logic is at best a courtesy in kitchens. Flour does what it wants. Yeast breaks promises and keeps them in the same week. Salt refuses to be interesting and is therefore the most interesting thing in the room. She begins to put slips under things as a test. Under the toaster, a list of people who called the school at lunch when they knew no one would answer. Under the chair, a margin drawing of triangles she made during a staff meeting where the principal tried to persuade the gym teacher that the gym was not the center of the school universe, and everyone else learned what the word discretion feels like when it leaks. Under the plant, a line that says light, which the plant obeys by leaning farther than is decent. When she sighs, quietly, walls take sighs personally. The slips sigh back in their little frictive way when she touches them, as if her hand had joined a union. She would be embarrassed if anyone saw the way she arranges her own hand against her old hand. There is a bit of worship in it. You do not worship your former selves. You survive them. But her old hand kept a town's bags labeled and a generation of parents reminded, and it deserves a moment under a lamp. In the evening, she hears at the stairwell the particular sound of a neighbor setting a bag down to fish in a pocket for keys. The stairwell smells like 2 dinners and something sweet and a winter coat that is learned the perfume of damp. She stands near her door and listens to the key turn and thinks of how a door lock accepts you until it doesn't tea, and then you are a person alone in a public place. A slip slides under her door on a little breath of air. It has her name on it, first and last, in violet. She picks it up and wants to leave it unturned so the possibility stays perfect. She turns it. The slip says, "Ready." She writes, "For what?" No response arrives. She puts water on for tea, not because she wants tea, but because heat is a friend. The band on her wrist cools. The fridge resumes its old hum, and then the new one in a polite seesaw. She puts a chair near the table like she might be asked to sit. On the day the snow finds itself, not flare-up snow, but the snow that affirms decisions, she walks to the old lot again. The paint of the lines on the asphalt looks fresh, like something has decided to be sure of itself. She stands in the place where she once pulled her car in crooked and ran a glass pie plate of potatoes into a friend's building and left with a hole in her glove where you can see the pale inside of an old burn. Footprints in the snow do what footprints do at a lot, resolve and then soften and then disappear. Not because nobody cares, but because there is only so long a mark can oppose a sky. A man in a wool cap stops 6 paces from her and nods the way men who want to offer help and not be implicated in any long exchange nod. She nods back. He keeps walking. She draws with her boot a line in the snow shaped like the loop of a G. She realizes her loop has improved without her permission. She wants to see the face of whoever is in charge of improvements. She does not tell Gladys. She does tell the plant. "You're doing fine," she says, and the plant nods, not theatrically, but the amount a plant nods when a person who waters it speaks. The slip that says, "Ready" returns with an addition. At source, apply. She makes a face purely for herself and no one else. She knows enough to see a command when a piece of paper tries to pass off a suggestion as one. She puts on her coat. The kitchen looks like a staging area because someone drew it that way. She carries the box into the hall and sets it on the banister because the hall will not forgive a box on the table that cannot be ignored. She touches the band. She touches the wall, her hand in the place that has made that rectangle in the ivy. She presses gently and something clicks, not mechanical, not like a light switch, more like a word in your mouth that suddenly agrees to be said. She lifts her hand. She has only ever lifted her hands to make a point in meetings, and the band stays for a moment, as if held by the wall, and then drops into her glove with a seriousness that makes her heart thump once and then again. She looks around like someone might have seen her do this. Only the stairwell sees. The stairwell is a good secret keeper. She goes inside and makes toast she does not eat. It becomes something to do. She applies the bands where a slip tells her to. They cling for a second and then fall. She picks them up and presses them into the box. The box admits them with a soft exhale you could call gratitude if you were generous to boxes. People in town start receiving their own boxes, if you can believe the talk. She hears it at the store when a woman tells a man, "There were lists, my lists," and he says, "What good is that?" And she says, "Good as any remembering." The store's fluorescent in aisle 2 has learned a new pitch. She moves faster. She hoes her little ribbon of garden in back as soon as the earth will take a scrape. She finds in the soil a slip she did not put there. folded tight as a seed. It says, "Coffee at 10." And this message feels like the only normal thing in her day. She has known coffee at 10 since she knew someone who knew her. She goes inside and makes it. It tastes like the end of the first month of school. It tastes like forms that are finally filled. She cannot decide if this is a haunting or a helpful. It does not matter. She is an implement now. The town needs someone to receive what it sends itself. She did it for years. She took calls. She moved slips. She made red pens find doors. She does it now with a box and her own old hand. There is a privacy to it that keeps shame out of rooms. Nobody comes to her to ask why. Nobody asks for what. They nod on the sidewalk. They look at her wrist a beat longer than is strictly neighborly, and then look at the traffic light because all our eyes need rest. One evening, she finds a fragment she had not noticed before, dried beneath the dish rack, curled like a leaf. She steams it with the kettle until it lies flat again. It is her old hand in a list that makes her put a hand on the back of the chair for balance. List of names, short, that includes her own with a star. The others are people whose handwriting she knows from years of absences and excuses. She sits. She reaches for the black pen, and her hand does not shake as much in the minute it takes to circle the star. She draws a line through her name as if to say, "Accounted for." She does not know whether a line through a name is a kindness or a closure. It can be both. The last wind of winter is not a dramatic wind. It is a maintenance wind. It makes shingles whisper. It teaches the flag to talk without the enjoyment of it. She puts her hand against the box and feels it warm under her palm. The warmth is not from the sun. It is an animal heat. She presses a little, not enough to force. The box opens its lips a fraction. She could look in. She does not. She learned long ago, the doors you do not open keep you kind. At night, the dead letter place in the dream is so full she can't hear the rain. A woman in a cardigan that was never new sorts slips by smell. A man with broad shoulders ties rubber around stacks without breaking any bands. A child reaches on tiptoe for a box with her name on it, and the adults let her take it down and open it and read. The child smiles the smile of people who read instructions they didn't realize they wanted. Margo wakes and smiles into the dark, and it feels like her face fits. She makes soup for the last time, or she thinks so. The recipe is perfect now, so she writes it one more in violet, slowly enough that the G behaves, and the loop of the G makes a little said yes shape. She eats by the window, and fog draws a finger across the glass, like someone trying to remember how a letter goes. The band on her wrist leaves a mark when she takes it off that is not a bruise, but believes in bruising. She rubs it the way a person rubs money for luck before they buy a coffee. The fridge hums on, new rhythm, old rhythm, and then the house settles, which it does in spring when the air returns to itself. "Ready?" says a slip on the table, and she says, "Yes," out loud, in a room that can keep a word. She places the band in the box and closes the lid and holds her hand on it long enough that heat passes through and makes of the cardboard a small practical stove. The radio says again, "Do not be alarmed," and she laughs into her sleeve like someone who believes in ovens after all. There will be a meeting at the church to decide whether to keep the food pantry in the place it is, or move it to where someone has offered a corner. There will be a call from a cousin who wants to know if she will sell the print of the shore that hangs above her couch, because someone in their family could use the frame. There will be a boy on the bus who will use a pencil to make small squares on the window as fog and then wipe them away with his sleeve, leaving a pattern that resembles a calendar no one will follow. There will be a band in a box on a table, and there will be a woman with her hand out, palm down, like you do when the dog needs to learn you are not here to turn the day into a command. When the box closes itself, because it will one day, because all things decide for you eventually, she will be somewhere ordinary, in the stairwell or in the lot, where lines tell trucks how to be straight, or in the kitchen with lemon on her hands and a spoon warm from soup. The slips will be on the rack like spoons. The fridge will choose its pitch. The lamp will buzz only a little. The town will have passed another ordinance it needed and didn't want. The man in the wool cap will still walk his dog with the small leash, and the dog will sniff the snow line and pretend it is important business and be right. If someone asks where the notes came from, she will tell them what she can, which is that paper goes where it is promised and comes back when it has work. If someone asks what remains, she will say, the work. The loop of a letter you can be proud of. The scent of ink that follows you down a hallway. The sound a compressor makes when it decides to keep doing its job. The way a bus stops when you put a star in the margin for it. And the driver sees you standing there, your hand up, polite as a letter waiting to be opened. When the box someday sits on someone else's table, under someone else's light, with someone else smoothing tape in the kind of long, slow gesture that keeps phrase from running, it will not miss her. Boxes don't know how to miss, they only know how to hold. It will do what is given. It will say ready. It will not care if the G in ready is a good G or not, though she hopes it will be. It will find a hand to write with. It will ask for a hand that remembers. It will, with luck, be placed near a window where fog comes politely and goes. It will hum along with a fridge that is doing its best. It will become the quiet at the center of a small room. It will stay, which is sometimes the only thing a person can ask of anything, that it stay long enough to know its own purpose, that it keep its paper noon and share it with anyone who sits down without an apology and says, let me see, then, what we have. If this story lands with you, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who enjoys quiet literary horror. Comments are open. Tell me your favorite image or line.